Hello, this is Joanne Hewins from LoveToCreate.typepad.com. Today I want to talk with you about making this Christmas card. This is made using the Winterwood stamp set. This is inside the annual catalog. And we'll be using this tree, and then we'll use these two on the inside of the card. We want to start off with doing the tree. Now, my friend Melissa Kerman has a technique called black ice, and this is actually taken a little bit from Melissa's technique. I didn't do quite all of the steps, but I want to give her credit for coming up with the idea of doing this. So I'm going to pull in my Stamparatus. I want to make sure that my tree is good and dark, and I'll be using Stays On ink with this. Now, Stays On sometimes doesn't go on as solid and good as I would like for it to, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to stamp more than one time. We did this card in my class, and I have to admit that it was kind of hard to keep this silver from coming up and moving, even though we had it on the Stamparatus. You can't really put the magnets on the card or on the paper because it covers most of it. And I did make it a little bit larger than it needs to be, but anyway, we're going to try this. And what I did was I took some painter's tape and taped it just up here on the edge. I know I'm going to be cutting that off. And then I put these magnets up close to the paper so that it would hold my back sheet in place. So hopefully that's going to work. So let me move this over just a little bit. Got my stamp case underneath there to keep that flat for me. And I'm using Stays On ink, as I said before. I did just re-ink my pad because I wanted it to be good and juicy. So I'm going to ink up my tree. And then we'll push down real good. And I'm going to hope as I pull this up that the silver paper stays in place. Not so great. But that's a pretty good image on there. I believe I'm not going to stamp again. I think it might mess it up. So I'm going to leave it as is. And I'm just going to take this plate off and set it aside. And I'm going to leave this alone for a little bit. The Stays On doesn't dry immediately, so I'm going to set it aside and let it be drying. That's why I started off with that. Okay, for my card, I did emboss the front with the Tin Tile Embossing Folder. So I cut my paper just a tiny bit smaller than the card. So the card is cut at 5.5 by 8.5, scored and folded at 4 1/4. That makes this layer 4 1/4 by 5.5. So I cut my layer 4 3/8 by 5 3/8. It's not right. 4 1/4. 4 1/4. So 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I will have these measurements on my blog, and this video will be linked to my blog. And then I ran this through. We run this through the Tin Tile Embossing Folder. But let me talk to you for a little bit. I have a pet peeve about this. To me, it's important to get everything aligned just correctly. So when I put my paper in, and I hope you can see, I want to look at it this way and this way. So I want to get this so that these two blocks, so this is kind of in the center of my card. So I look at the design here, and I try to get it so that it's the same. And then from the top to the bottom, I'll look at that too. So as best I can. So I'm going to move that up and try to get this, and well, maybe I need to move it down. Try to get this design and this design about the same also. And that way, it just has a more symmetrical look when it comes out. And most people might not notice that, but I do. So I might be a little strange. I've already embossed that for us right now, though. And I feel like it came out looking pretty much uniform on all sides. So I'm going to take my card base and fold that in half. And I didn't score this down the middle, but I did match my corners. And oftentimes, even if you score it, you're still going to have to match those corners and make sure that they come together, because your scoring might not always be perfect either. Now I'm going to use my glue to glue this base on. Oftentimes when you emboss with the ups and downs, glue seems to be better. And I'll just try to center that. I do go from corner to corner or diagonal and try to get mine straight that way. And see, I've got a little bit of glue here on the front, but after it dries, I'll be able to get that off. Okay, and here too. All right, so there's the front of the card. And I am using today for dies the rectangle stitched dies. The larger one, well actually it is the fourth one in, 1, 2, 3, the fourth one in is used for the white piece. And in the interest of time, I've already cut that one out. And then the smaller one, which would be the fifth one in, will be used to cut out this piece. So I'm going to leave that aside, leave that there where I can get it in just a minute when I cut out the silver. I'm still going to give that a little bit more time to dry. And while I'm doing that, I'll just go ahead and work on the inside of the card. So at the top of that, I have Friends Make the Season Shine, and this is from the Making Christmas Bright stamp set. In fact, all of the stamp sets I'm using today are in the annual catalog. I designed this card before the holiday catalog came out. So I will just take this, I'm inking it up in real red. Okay, yay. I was afraid that would be all crooked. And then from the Winter Wood stamp set, as I said before, we're going to use these two stamps and do a little something here in the corner. So for the pine cones, sorry, I'm going to be using soft suede. And I'm just going to kind of stamp a couple. Not my best stamping there, sorry about that. And then we'll use the Pear Pizzazz for the branches. And that kind of covered up some of that ugliness I had in between there. So, okay, I could have done a little bit nicer job on the pine cones. And we'll just add a little bit of glue to the back of this and put that on the inside of my card. And this is a piece of Whisper White that is 4 by 5 1/4. Okay. I'm going to use one of these old things here to get a little bit of that glue up, although I think a lot of that will be covered up. In fact, I think I'll just go ahead and put this layer on, and then we'll hope that that black is dry. And when you have your embossing folder centered, then it's a little bit easier to center these layers as well. Okay, I'll set that aside and we'll work on our tree. So I'm going to pull this back in and remove my painter's tape. Now I would probably save that if I were going to make another one. And if you're not sure that that's dry, you can always run the heat tool over it just a little. Sorry about that noise. So what I'm going to do now is run my Versamark. Hold on just a moment. I try so hard, but I seem to forget something every time. So I'm going to take my Versamark pad, and I'm going to start up at the top, and I'm just going to come all the way down. And then I'm going to do the same again. I'm going to try not to. That's why I cut this a little bit bigger, so that fingerprints and that kind of thing will come off. So I've got this with the Versamark, and now I'm going to take my Clear Embossing Powder and just spoon that all over the surface of my card. And it may not cover uniformly or exact, but that's really kind of what we are after. So there it is. You put the lid back on this before I start using my heat tool. And I'm going to take your pick tool and kind of hold this in place. And excuse the noise, but I'm going to go ahead and melt the powder. Hopefully you can see. Just makes a really pretty surface on there. Okay, I'm going to turn this over on the back. If you're thinking that that would make it lay a little flatter, I don't believe it is. So we'll just stop there. Okay, let me look. I believe I have it, and you might can see that there's some inconsistencies across there, but like I said, that's what I wanted. Okay, so I'm going to cut this out quickly, and I think I'm just going to do it off screen and be right back. Thank you for being patient with me. So I'm just going to pull that off and pull that off. And here's my tree. Now it did cut off just a little bit here on the edges, but that's okay. So I'm going to take my glue and glue the tree down on the front. I like to use the glue because it gives me a little bit of leeway to move that around if I need to. And then we're going to be using the red rhinestone basic jewels to decorate our tree. And I'm just going to use again my Take Your Pick tool. To add those around. And you can put as many or as few as you wish. Okay, I think I'll leave it at that. And then we just have our saying left to do. So the saying is from the Itty Bitty Greetings stamp set. 'Tis the season. So let me pull that over, and a scrap. Sorry about that. Scrap of white, and I'll be stamping that in red. And then we'll use the classic label punch to punch that out. Okay. And then we'll just glue that right on. So while that card might look hard, it's really quite easy. So I'll just add 'Tis the Season down here in the corner. And there we go. We have the outside and the inside of our card. Thank you so much for joining me. As I said, I'll link this to my video or my blog post that goes with this card. If you need supplies, I would love for you to consider buying those from me. And thank you again. Until next time. Bye-bye.